People hate the black and white anime, but I don't. I might be biased because my first games were the Unova ones, but I feel like the anime was a fun watch, even with Ash having many bad moments. Regardless, I wanted to talk about my favorite Pokemon of his Unova team, Krookodile. This guy quite literally carried the anime in terms of power and likability, which is why many people group him with Ash's aces from other regions. Still, I've seen some debate as to whether or not the Desert Croc really could be considered an ace. That's what this video is for, trying to understand what makes an ace and if Krookodile fits the parameters to be one. First, let's determine who are the agreed upon aces by the majority of people. Those are Charizard, Sceptile, Infernape, Greninja, Lycanroc, Incineroar, and most recently, Lucario. I would have included Heracross, but his feats don't stack up to these other guys, and Johto's ace was Charizard again anyway, so it doesn't matter. So let's start with things that these guys don't have in common. First of all, an ace doesn't need to be a starter. This one's kind of obvious, so I want to get it out of the way, seeing as both Lycanroc and Lucario aren't starter Pokemon of any region. Moving on, not all aces need to have a long-term rival. Even though most of the Pokemon in this list had great showdowns with their rivals during Ash's final battles of each journey, Charizard, Sceptile, and Lucario didn't. They don't have rivals to themselves. And even though Charizard was Ash's ace up in his sleeve against Gary's Blastoise, for example, or even against that Blaziken in the end of the Johto League, none of those Pokemon really were that crucial to his development. Now, to list the rivals of the Pokemon that do have them, Infernape had a rivalry with Paul's Electivire, Greninja had a rivalry with Alon's Mega Charizard, Lycanroc had a rivalry with Gladion's Lycanroc, and Incineroar had a rivalry with Professor Kukui's Incineroar. Next, an ace doesn't need to have a gimmick. Having a gimmick is what makes some of these Pokemon well-liked, but only 4 of them actually have one, those being Infernape's Blaze, Greninja's Battle Bond, Lycanroc's Dusk Form and Signature Z-Move, and Lucario's Mega Evolution. Charizard, Sceptile, and Incineroar are very strong, but have nothing unique to them that Ash uses, seeing as Charizard and Sceptile have Mega Evolutions that Ash never used, and Incineroar has a Signature Z-Move that, again, Ash never got. The last thing I want to mention for this part of the video is that they don't need to be the strongest Pokemon of that saga. This may sound a bit obvious, and first of all, they're never going to be the best Pokemon of that saga because Pikachu is always there, and Pikachu is Ash's strongest Pokemon, period. But besides that, all these Pokemon are very strong, but since Alola had 2 aces being Lycanroc and Incineroar, both can't be the strongest. Therefore, being the strongest is not a requirement to be one of Ash's ace Pokemon. Now, I'll just go over which of these things I just named Krookodile fits into. First of all, he is not a starter. That's obvious. Second, he had a long-term rivalry with Ash's Pikachu before he was captured. After that, the two were buddies for all I can remember, so I'm counting that as a rivalry, even though it's with a Pokemon that Ash himself has. Next, Krookodile does not have a special gimmick, seeing as he is a Gen 5 Pokemon, and that was before Game Freak decided to introduce new mechanics for each new title of the series going forward. Lastly, I believe he is Ash's strongest Pokemon during the Unova anime, although there is room for debate regarding this topic, but it's not what I'm covering in this video, so let's move on. Now is the part of the video that really matters, because I'll be naming the similarities between all of Ash's ace Pokemon, meaning that if Krookodile doesn't fit any of this criteria, then he's automatically not considered an ace. So let's start off with a few of the things that these Pokemon share in common. First, let's start with what's obvious again, which is that all of these Pokemon have evolved to their final form, which honestly is a minimum requirement for them to be considered strong at all, even though that doesn't really matter that much in the anime world. Another thing that all of these Pokemon have in common is the fact that all of them have backstories before they eventually make their way into being one of Ash's Pokemon. Charmander was abandoned by his trainer and later rescued by Ash in the rain. Trico wanted to save his dying home, and only after his home withered away did he decide to join Ash's party. Chimchar was one of Pole's Pokemon, but he was eventually abandoned because Pole didn't see any potential anymore in him. Froakie was a rebellious Pokemon that was a starter option in Professor Sycamore's lab, but all the trainers that chose him eventually gave him back to the professor, seeing that Froakie did not obey their commands. Froakie only decided to go with Ash because he saw something in him, being a trainer worthy to train under. Next, Rockruff, he one day appeared starved and confused at Professor Kukui's house, and only after Ash helped him overcome his weakness by helping him defeat that Magmar from that one Pokemon episode, did he decide to allow Ash to catch him and train him. Litten was taken care of by an old Stoutland that was dying of his old age, and after the Stoutland passed away, Litten went towards Ash and allowed himself to be caught. Lastly, we have Riolu, who began his story with Ash as an egg that Nurse Joy said that many trainers tried to hatch it, but they never had any results. So she gave the egg to Ash, who felt a strong connection with him through his aura, and eventually it hatched, allowing Ash and Riolu to train to become even stronger in the future. The last similarities that I could find between all of these Pokemon is that all of them met Ash while in their first stage. Ash met Charmander by the rock where he was abandoned by his previous trainer. He met Trico by the tree where he once lived before joining Ash's party. He met Chimchar when first fighting against Pole by Professor Rowan's lab in the Sinnoh region. He first met Froakie after being saved by him after Team Rocket attacked him when he first arrived in the Kalos region. He met Rockruff at Professor Kukui's house. He met Litten after first arriving in Melemele Island and accidentally stepping on his tail after running past him. And he met Riolu as an egg that was gifted to him by Nurse Joy. Now, once again, I'll go over the criteria that I established that is required to be an ace and see if Krookodile fits. First of all, Krookodile is a Pokemon in its final stage, being one of the few Pokemon that reach their final form in Ash's Unova team. Next, Krookodile does have a backstory, being the leader of a group of Sandile that were trying to save Pokemon from a geyser that was going to erupt. Later, Sandile would follow Ash and his friends to get a chance to fight Pikachu and defeat him. After being officially beaten by Pikachu, Ash offered for him to join his team. Lastly, even though Krookodile was caught by Ash as a Krokorok, the middle stage of this evolutionary line, he did meet him in the first few episodes of the Black and White anime as a Sandile. So, if you've been following along with what I've been saying for the past few minutes, then you already know the answer to the question of whether or not Krookodile can be considered one of Ash's aces. To recap, Krookodile is in his final stage, has a backstory, and met Ash in his first stage, meaning that just like all of his other ace Pokemon, and by using this criteria, he can be considered an ace of Ash's Unova team during his journey in Gen 5. However, even if Krookodile is an ace, does he stack up to these other legacy pick Pokemon? Do people love Krookodile as much as these other guys? Let's talk about it. As I mentioned before with countless examples, the other aces had amazing moments in the anime, and are staples of their home regions. Did Krookodile have that? I mean, kinda. Krookodile fought against Iris's Dragonite and won, and that thing was a beast. He also fought Stefan Sock in the Unova League, which was a good battle. But were these as good as some battles of the other aces, like Infernape's battle with Volkner's Luxray, or Lucario's battle against Beast Machamp? I don't think so. And as for Krookodile being a staple of Unova, I think that's a no as well. Since, if you look at the results of the Pokemon of the Year poll that was out through Google in 2020, you'll notice something, which is that at the top 10 Pokemon placements for each region, you'll see that all of Ash's aces made it. All except for Krookodile. Although he did place 11th for Unova, that is. Krookodile may have been Ash's Unova ace, but he most certainly wasn't loved as much as the other ones. He didn't need to have Charizard's popularity or Greninja's moments, but maybe, just maybe, if the Pokemon anime had placed its focus on Krookodile like it did for other aces, and had him join Ash's team earlier, then he could have been as popular of a Pokemon as powerhouses like the other aces that Ash Ketchum had in the other regions. Because let's be honest, if there's something this guy had going for him, is his immaculate style. That's it for this video. Please let me know in the comments down below if you think that the criteria that I use is good enough and if you have any other ideas. But besides that, thank you very much for watching and until next time.